Somewhere in your home right now, there may be a dog who is grieving, not for a person necessarily, for another dog, a cat, a companion animal who was part of their daily world and is now simply gone, with no explanation, no goodbye, no way for anyone to tell them what happened or when the absence will end. For a long time, science was hesitant to use the word grief for what happens to animals in these situations. It felt too human, too easily projected. But the research over the past 2 decades has made something increasingly difficult to ignore. The behavioral and physiological signs of loss in dogs are real, measurable, and in many cases, strikingly similar to the patterns we see in human bereavement. Today we are going into what the science actually says. Not sentiment, not projection. What has actually been observed, measured, and documented. The study that made people pay attention. The most widely cited research on this topic comes from a 2022 study published in the Scientific Reports by researchers at the University of Milan, led by Federica Perrone. The study surveyed over 400 Italian dog owners who had experienced the death of a companion dog in a multi-dog household. The findings were significant. 86% of owners reported noticing behavioral changes in their surviving dog following the death of their companion. The most commonly reported changes included increased attention seeking from the human caregiver, changes in sleeping patterns, reduced appetite, increased fearfulness, and a general reduction in playfulness that persisted for weeks. Critically, the study found that the intensity of the surviving dog's behavioral changes correlated with the quality and duration of the relationship the 2 dogs had shared, and also with how the surviving dog witnessed the death or the events surrounding it. Dogs who had a longer, closer relationship with the deceased companion, and dogs who were present for a decline in health before death, showed more pronounced and longer-lasting behavioral changes than dogs whose companion relationship was more distant or whose companion's death was sudden and unwitnessed. This is not proof of grief in the full human sense, but it is strong evidence that the loss of a companion produces a measurable, sustained disruption to a dog's behavior and well-being, one that scales with the depth of the relationship that was lost. What the behavioral changes actually look like. Owners who have been through this describe a fairly consistent pattern, and it lines up closely with what the research documents. Searching behavior is one of the most commonly reported signs. A surviving dog will go to the spots where their companion used to be, their bed, their favorite window, the door they used to wait at, and appear to look for them. Some dogs vocalize in these locations in a way they did not before. Appetite changes are extremely common. A significant portion of surviving dogs eat less in the weeks following a companion's death, sometimes dramatically less, before gradually returning to normal over a period that can range from days to several months, depending on the individual dog and the depth of the bond. Sleep changes appear frequently as well. Some dogs sleep more, seemingly withdrawing, while others sleep less, showing the restlessness associated with disrupted routine and unresolved distress. Both patterns have been documented, and which one appears seems to depend on the individual dog's typical stress response style. Increased clinginess toward the human members of the household is one of the most emotionally resonant findings. Surviving dogs frequently seek significantly more physical contact and proximity with their human caregivers following the loss of a companion animal. Behavior consistent with a dog reaching for available sources of comfort and co-regulation when a previous source has disappeared. The question of whether they understand death. Here is where the science gets more careful and where it is important to be precise rather than sentimental. There is no evidence that dogs possess a conceptual understanding of death in the way humans do, an abstract awareness of mortality, an understanding that a companion has ceased to exist rather than simply left or gone somewhere temporarily. Dogs almost certainly do not grieve the way humans grieve, with the layered cognitive and existential dimensions that human bereavement carries. What dogs appear to experience instead is something behaviorally and physiologically similar to grief, without the same conceptual architecture behind it. The disruption is real, the distress is real, the changes in behavior, appetite, and sleep are real and documented, but the dog is very likely not processing this, as I understand that my companion has died and will never return. They are experiencing something closer to a sustained, confusing, unresolved absence, a disruption to an expected pattern that does not resolve the way ordinary absences do. This distinction matters, but it does not make the experience less significant for the dog living through it. A profound and sustained behavioral disruption produced by loss is a real welfare concern, regardless of whether the dog understands the metaphysics of what has happened. Do dogs grieve humans the same way? The research specifically examining dogs who have lost their human companion, rather than a canine companion, is more limited, largely because it is harder to study ethically and systematically. But the anecdotal and clinical veterinary behavior literature is substantial and consistent. Veterinary behaviorists frequently report cases of dogs showing significant behavioral disruption following the death or prolonged absence of a primary attachment figure. Reduced appetite, disrupted sleep, searching behavior, vocalization at doors or windows, and a general behavioral profile that mirrors what has been documented in dogs, following the loss of a canine companion, often more intensely given the primacy of the human-dog attachment bond covered throughout this series. Given what we know about the depth and neurological reality of the primary attachment bond between a dog and their person, the co-regulation, the oxytocin, the cortisol synchrony, the safe-base function, it would be more surprising if dogs did not show significant distress following the loss of that specific relationship than if they did. The attachment is real. The disruption of that attachment through death produces the same category of nervous system response that any other significant, sustained loss of the attachment figure would produce. The physiological side of grief. Beyond the observable behavior, there is a physiological dimension to this that deserves attention. Chronic stress responses, elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep architecture, suppressed immune function have been documented in animals experiencing sustained separation from an attachment figure across multiple species, not just dogs. The mechanisms behind bereavement-related physiological changes in humans have documented parallels in the animal stress literature more broadly, even in species without anything resembling human cognitive or emotional complexity. This means the toll a significant loss takes on a dog is not purely behavioral or emotional in an abstract sense. It has a physical cost. Chronic stress following a loss can affect appetite, immune resilience, and overall physical health during the period of adjustment, which is part of why veterinary professionals increasingly recommend paying close attention to a surviving dog's physical health in the weeks and months following the loss of a companion. What time does the research is consistently reassuring on one point. For the majority of dogs, these changes are not permanent. The Milan study found that most surviving dogs showed a gradual return toward their baseline behavior over a period ranging from a few weeks to around 6 months, with appetite and sleep typically normalizing before playfulness and general engagement fully returned. A smaller subset of dogs showed more prolonged disruption, particularly those who had an unusually close bond with the companion they lost or who experienced additional stressors, a household move, a change in routine. During the same period, this mirrors, in a loose but genuine way, patterns observed in human bereavement, a period of acute disruption followed by gradual adaptation, with the timeline and intensity varying significantly based on the depth of the relationship and the presence of additional stressors during the grieving period. What you can actually do. If your dog is going through this, there are specific things the behavioral research supports. Maintain routine as much as possible. Consistency and predictability are two of the most reliably protective factors against prolonged stress in dogs, and a period of loss is exactly when routine tends to slip the most, which compounds the disruption rather than easing it. Increase your own availability and physical presence during this period. Given what we know about co-regulation and the role of the human attachment figure in a dog's emotional stability, your calm, consistent presence is one of the most direct tools available to help a grieving dog stabilize. Do not rush to replace the lost companion immediately in an effort to fix the grief. While getting a new companion animal eventually can be genuinely beneficial for many dogs, introducing a new animal too quickly before the surviving dog has had time to adjust can create additional stress rather than relief. Watch appetite and physical health closely and involve your veterinarian if appetite suppression or other physical symptoms persist beyond a few weeks, since prolonged physiological stress carries genuine health risks that are worth monitoring actively, rather than assuming will resolve on their own. Dogs may not understand death the way we do, but the disruption, the searching, the quiet weeks of a nervous system trying to make sense of an absence that does not resolve, that is real. It has been measured. It deserves to be taken seriously. If you are going through this with your own dog right now, be patient with them. And be patient with yourself too. Drop a comment. I read every single one. Subscribe. New video every week. See you next time.